safety includes police, fire, rescue, fire prevention, building inspections, jails. And I know you all know this. And again, the impact that we've had, because as you can see, each and every one that was down here on that April 3rd meeting that came out and said that we needed to cut 5 positions. That's the way it started, and that's what got everyone flustered. And again, Mr. Thomas, I can't thank Mr. Taylor enough, because he addressed the fact of how would this affect the quality of our life in Caroline County if there were the cuts that were made. We know that it's a necessity. I know most of you support us tremendously. And looking at everyone that's here, when we ask you to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, and when we couldn't get the answer of too many deputies and how many we had, and when we show per capita we do much more, we're here to answer your questions. Our budget is out there. I know when we sat down, and I thank Mr. Underwood for sitting down with us to go each line item for line item. I asked the rest of you, please come and see, because we worked hard with staff, with Mr. Parton, with Ms. Fran Hatcher. And I know that we now have a 4-cent increase for taxes. And y'all will be, again, entrusted of where those monies will be spent. I took an oath 8 years ago to protect the people of Caroline County. I said then and I say now, I will be here as long as the people want me and as long as my health is good. When we start cutting services and see us going back with narcotics and all the other things that are out there, and the constant pitting sometimes of education with public safety, when it is our future. I ask you all again to support us like every county employee, because we did sit down with staff. I thank my people for showing up tonight. I thank those of the constituent meetings that we went to and will be going to. So may God bless each and every one of you to make the right decisions when it's time. Thank you.
Sheriff Lipper, thank you very much. And to all the deputies and office personnel, we do thank you for coming. We do thank you for showing your support. I honestly do appreciate it, and we do understand. So thank you very much.
It's okay if I leave, the rowdy group is going, I'll take care of them.
Is Major Mosier going to stay?
Yeah, I think he stays.
Or you can just, well, I was going to, never mind. Ms. Anderson, give us 1 second. That was his time. Ms. Anderson, whenever you're ready.
Well, you know, Mary Anderson, Western Carolina District. I went to the sheriff's constituent meeting recently. I had heard that he questioned the source of the data I gave you at the last meeting. So I went to the constituent meeting with my spreadsheet and the county report so I could show him where the data came from. And I stayed for the constituent meeting, and it was very interesting. Sheriff Lippa had been told by the Board of Supervisors to cut 5 personnel, and he was very upset by that. And he said repeatedly that that was the wrong approach, that all you had to do was tell him how much money he needed to cut, and he could figure out how to do that without cutting people. Now, I hope the Board of Supervisors has not told him specifically to cut 5 people. That would be wrong. And I wholeheartedly endorse the sheriff's approach to cutting the funds that need to be cut without cutting people. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for that reminder while there's still some deputies here. To my knowledge, the Board of Supervisors has not made any commitment to say cut 5 positions. We're discussing funding cuts and things of that nature, so I don't think anybody has said anything to that nature. But yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Bonnie Kilgore-Lease, and I'm in Western Carolina District. I'm actually on the Board of Social Services. I volunteer with the Victim Witness Program in Caroline County, so I'm aware of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. I'm I'm 65 years old. I am an advocate of the fire department because who knows when I'll need one. And I'm an advocate of law and order, so I believe in the police force too. And I was at that meeting on Monday night with the sheriff. And I would like to advocate across the board as having each agency make their own cuts. I was director of the Rape Crisis Center in Prince William County for almost 20 years and have struggled with such issues. And the heads of agencies and the people who work in the agencies know what they can cut. They know what they can do without. And I do agree with Sheriff Lipa that he knows, like he so clearly said, where the fat is and he can clear it out. So my advocacy is for across the board to allow all the agencies to make their own cuts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. My name is Joseph James, and I would like to also mention that I left the county almost 30 years ago, came back to Caroline in 2005, and I've seen a dramatic difference in the public safety provided by the Sheriff's Office. And not just the Sheriff's Office, but the fire department, the EMTs, and everybody else that serves the county. I think that everyone on the board really needs to do their due diligence and make sure that the services that we're receiving today, based on the funds available, continue. I understand that there's a shortage of funds. We need to carefully, very carefully look at where there is fraud and abuse and all those other things that exist in every branch of government across our country, our state and county, and make sure that we do what we can to save every position. I live on Route 30 near Meadow Event Park, live in Dawn area, and I know what it used to be like, and I know what it's like now. I know that it's that way now because of the services provided by the Sheriff Department here in Caroline County. If we lose, let's not even talk about 5 positions. If we lose 1 position, it's going to be detrimental to our way of life. The safety for our children, grandchildren, those positions in the county need to be maintained. We need to look everywhere we can. Ms. Underwood mentioned before, there are no sacred cows. We need to do that. We need to open the book, and everyone that has presented a budget, look at it line item by line item, and that there's a saving to be made, we make it. And we try to preserve that public safety concern that everyone has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Board of Supervisors, Board of Directors. My name is Ken Pickin. I'm a new, moved in recently. I'll always be a newcomer. Been coming 30-some years. Y'all in a rock and a hard spot. Nobody wants to quote loans or how much the bank will rent you. The state don't want to loan you money. You're at the bottom. You're going to have to raise taxes. Don't raise taxes just enough so this year we owe $5,000. Everyone in here, I believe, owes a certain amount, $5,000. $55,000 this year. Next year it'll be $5,500. Next year it'll be $6,000. If you're going to tax us, tax us. We're not going to like it. We got to get off the bottom. Everything I see in the Commonwealth, we're on the lowest numbers. Education, everything else, amount spent per student, whatever. Go ahead and tax us and get us off of it. How to save money. Brainstorming. One hourly employee from every department get together for about an hour and talk. Suggestions how to fix this, how to fix that. Work on things. It will grow. They will figure ways how to save money in-house and how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickett.
Gentlemen, my name is Donnie Farmer from Milford. And would it not be a fair statement to say part of the reason we are in a deficit is money that you all have okayed to spend in these bad times, such as YMCAs, Dawn libraries, and special fire trucks for Ladysmith that should have been paid for by the contractor? These are just some of the word that's going around, and I don't have all the numbers. But I'm sure if you understand what I'm saying right now, then you do know where some stuff could be cut out and why it was spent to start with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Seeing no more, we'll declare the public comment section closed. Yes, ma'am. If you will give those electronically to Mr. Parton, we'll post those on the website for St. Jude. Next is our public hearing. Agenda item number 2, the board will...
Mr. Thomas,
Yes, sir.
before we go, could I,
No responses, Mr. Taylor. We're moving right on. We're moving to the public hearing. Who has this public hearing? Mr. Parton? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to consider repealing Article 6, Section 103-43B of the Code of Caroline County. This section is a subsection of the personal property ordinance that was added to allow a 50% reduction in the personal property tax assessment for one vehicle per volunteer fire and rescue. This was actually one of 2 incentives recommended by the Emergency Services Commission as a way to increase fire and rescue volunteers. Now, since the reduced assessment has been implemented, we've identified a couple of concerns, and it's not worked as well, frankly, as we had hoped it would. One of the concerns is there is a wide disparity in the actual benefit received by individual volunteers. The second is that the cost is significantly more expensive than what we originally anticipated. With regard to the disparity in benefit, if you are a volunteer who has a later model or more expensive automobile or truck, you're going to see a bigger benefit from this incentive than someone who owns a less expensive automobile. When we originally considered the incentive, the Emergency Services Commission had recommended that we cap the amount at $10,000. In the original estimates that were developed, we thought that would be sufficient to cover all the eligible volunteers. As it turns out, in actuality, the reduced assessments totaled about $24,000 in FY 2011 and approximately $22,000 in FY 2012. So as a result of these 2 issues, the disparity in the benefit received and the cost overrun, staff is recommending that we repeal this section of the ordinance and replace this particular incentive with a stipend program that we'll talk about later. I also want to make clear that the proposed revision to the ordinance would not eliminate the free county decal, which is now tacked on to the personal property tax since we have a permanent decal. Would not eliminate that. That would remain in place. Finally, I would say that the Commissioner has asked that we vote on this amendment tonight if possible because she needs to finalize the personal property assessments for the current year. And as a result, we need a decision tonight if the board is willing to repeal the ordinance. To do that, you would need to amend the typical rules of order and waive the 3rd hearing. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, there will be a stipend program talked about later on the agenda that would replace this benefit. I don't know that we need to adopt that tonight. There's a little more time to probably discuss that with the volunteers and work out particulars on that, but we do need to act on the ordinance tonight if you're willing to repeal it.
Board members have any questions for Mr. Parton at this time or need a little background on where this came from? Questions? No? Mr. Black? Okay. Well, I'll provide a little background just in case. This was something that we did a few years ago because we previously only gave the free county decal to volunteers. We were trying to do something a little more. And as Mr. Parton referenced, it actually cost a little more than we planned. And there was some disparity on who got the benefit versus our intention to do it across. So we are looking at repealing this particular ordinance and then addressing it in agenda item number 5, which will be changes to the incentive program. So we will continue with the public hearing. If there are no questions for Mr. Parton at this time, I will declare the public hearing to be opened. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Good to see you, Earl.
Good to see you too, sir.
Wish I had good news, and just for the record, my name is Earl Sharp. I'm in the Mattaponi District. I come here tonight speaking in opposition of the Repeal Act on this, mainly for a technicality. It's not been communicated effectively to the volunteer organizations. I believe the first release of it was done last night with regard to the new incentive program or proposed one. The ink's not even dry on the paper, and you're being asked to take action tonight on something that you really do not have a good, solid background and information on. I come in opposition as an individual because, like I said, it was not communicated out clearly. In reading the board packet very briefly online, and I'd personally like to thank Mr. Parton for answering a technical question earlier today. Strategic planning is needed in this area overall for volunteer recruitment and retention. The motto behind this is to plan better. If you look back in the history of this, as Mr. Thomas said, the original figure probably was just a rough estimate that did not come true in the beginning. I would urge the board to not take action on repealing this tonight, allow more time, allow the new fire chief who's come on board effective March 19th. Please note in your board packet the memo was generated to staff on March 21st. Which doesn't give them a fair opportunity to study the matter further and to look at the total impact on it. We have some folks here tonight, and like the sheriff, I think that this had been widely published and gone out. We would probably have as many as 30 or 40 up here, and Mr. Thomas, you would be faced with the same issue trying to segregate out a crowd on that.
And I would have done the same thing.
Yes. And we do agree that the program as a whole, as with any program implemented in government, does need to be reviewed and looked at for a thorough impact on there. We urge greater planning in these areas and look forward to working cooperatively and all. I speak to you tonight as an individual, and we look forward to further dialogue with the board as all the independent organizations in the county under the umbrella of a combined organization that you've so chosen to implement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter?
Good evening. My name is George Spinner, and I live in the Mattaponi District. First of all, I want to say that I am for this. I think it's a good opportunity to show our volunteers how much we appreciate them. The question I had, and this is a question, is what is going to constitute an active volunteer rescue squad or fire company member? Is it going to be putting in a certain number of hours? Or, I mean, for instance, if I went and joined the Froglow Volunteer Fire Department and went through their training and then never showed up to a meeting or did anything really other than just verbal something or other, would that still constitute me as an active volunteer rescue squad or fire department member? I guess I'm just looking to see, you know, if there's going to be certain criteria that somebody's going to have to meet in order to be considered for this type of tax break. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? I'm waiting. You don't have to rush.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jess Southworth. I live at 24349 Sparta Road, and I'm in the Bowling Green voting district. I'm also a volunteer in Caroline County and have been for about 28 years. Most of us don't volunteer for the incentive program. We didn't go into it for that. We do it because we want to give back to the community and help our fellow constituents. I would just like to say that the volunteers put forth a lot of man hours, a lot of time, a lot of their own money, and just consider that when you're thinking about all of this.
Thank you, Mr. Southworth. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none, public hearing is declared closed. Once again, for the board's reminder, we are actually what's before us is repealing the ordinance that provided additional reductions on personal property taxes for active volunteer rescue squad and fire company members. That repeal will then be addressed later on, should we decide to do that, with a new program that's going to replace it, which will be number 5. Board members have any questions of Mr. Parton, or perhaps if we could indulge the fire chief if there are any questions for him. Mr. Black.
Yeah, Chief Lawson, can I have questions for you? I'm not obviously familiar with these programs very much. Well, from where you come from, what are the incentives? What are typical incentives for volunteers?
In Accomack County, we have very few other than the sticker.
Okay, and what about other counties comparable to our size? What is a typical?
There's a variety of programs out there, and probably the one that attracts the most, as the gentleman that came up here, most volunteers aren't going to volunteer for the incentive program. It is a benefit for them, afforded to them. One of the greatest benefits you can give is the service award program funded by the county. They put so much time in the department, you put so much money in account for them. When they meet retirement age or time in the department, those funds are paid back to them over a period of time. It's a LoSAP program. You have one on the books here. I haven't had a chance to look at that, but in my opinion, that is the best program out there because it pays some benefit over the long period, and it requires some level of participation in the organization, and you can define what those levels are.
Okay. And are you going to put something like that forward to us?
You already have a LoSAP program on the books here. I haven't been able to get to that as far as my research and my reading, but okay. You do have one of those in Caroline County.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that my understanding of this was, again, an opportunity for the board to show its appreciation to the volunteers. We had something in place, and when we put that in place, our intention was to let the volunteers know how much that service is appreciated. And you know, what they do, the things that they do for the county are not things that we can pay them for, but we wanted to show their appreciation. Again, we were in a situation where we felt we would make a change that would be for the better. The only problem with that is whenever you're dealing with numbers of people, you're always going to have varying opinions. People are going to interpret it one way, and other people are going to interpret it another. Unfortunately, you can't please everybody. So you have to make a decision that you feel is best and sort of move on. And I think that was the general idea behind what we did here. Make no mistake about it, the board doesn't want to do anything to certainly hurt the volunteers or to not let the volunteers realize that we do very much appreciate their service. But it's just going to be very difficult to write one thing or come up with one particular thing that everybody is going to feel is best. So you do the best you can and you sort of move on. And I think that's where we are right now with this situation. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley.
I guess I wasn't aware that the volunteers had not really been notified that this was actually taking place tonight. I know that we talked about it 2 board meetings ago. I guess that distresses me a little bit. But I have to defer to Mr. Southworth's comments, and I've heard from other volunteers that they're in this not for compensation, but for helping the community and those neighbors around them. And knowing that the budget situation is what it is, and how underfunded we actually anticipated this program to be. I mean, we funded it at about $10,000. It's come in about 1.5, 2 times what we thought it was going to be. I know that in the situation when we're going to have to work through this and come up with another method. So though I understand some of the concerns about knowledge, I also understand the budget situation and where we're at. So, Mr. Chairman, I will just say that I'm hoping we can work through this in other ways.
In other words, as opposed to not repealing it? Or? All right, just to summarize real quick, and again, I'm not going to take it personal, but you're calling my child ugly, because this was my idea a few years ago. And we were really just trying to do something more for the volunteers. But what happened was a new volunteer with a brand new car got more credit than a 20-year volunteer with an old car. So there was some inequity about it. What we're going to do is get rid of this program, and then we're going to replace it with a stipend that'll take care of some payment for each person's car, so we're still doing something for the volunteers. So that's the intention. If the board wishes to move ahead with the repealing of the ordinance, I think we should do a technicality first and see if the board would like to waive the third public hearing, which is our normal. So would the board wish to change its rules of order and waive the third public hearing for this matter? Third reading, I'm sorry, of this matter, which would mean we could then vote on it and repeal it right now.
I'll so move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Is there a second? Well, I'm not going to let the motion die for a second. The chair is allowed to second motion, so I will second Mr. Seeley's motion. All those in favor of repealing this motion, well, discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Waiving the third hearing.
the only thing the only thing I will say is I'm just a little concerned with what Mr. Sharp said about I guess he feels that you know, this is a last minute thing for him. So I do have that concern.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I may, again, what we're doing tonight is simply repealing the portion of the personal property ordinance that provides the reduced assessment.
Right.
We are not adopting the stipend program. There's time for additional discussion on that. It just so happens that the commissioner has to finalize her book, and we're bumping up against that time frame. But again, I want to be clear, we're not adopting any stipend program, so there's time to go back and get additional input from the volunteers on the particulars of that. What we're doing tonight is simply amending, or repealing rather, the ordinance that relates to reduced personal property assessment.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, my concern is that it does call for a third reading, and I would, although we have the right to vote, I'd just like to let it run its course.
According to Mr. Parton, that third reading would conflict with what the Commissioner of Revenue needs to do as far as her closing out her books or personal property laws. Is that right, Ms. Carter? You could just say yes or no. We need to adopt this at this particular meeting so you can take care of the personal property books. So that's okay. So there is. We'll move to the motion to waive the third hearing and take up this matter right now, if that's the desire of the board.
Mr. Chairman, what would happen if we did vote not to repeal it? But she can't close her books?
Mrs. Carter would have an issue with the personal property tax rolls.
Right. What is in effect now would remain in place, and you can expect that the cost would be $22,000, $24,000. The current reduced 50% reduction would remain in place.
How does the board wish to proceed? We have a motion on the floor. The motion is to waive our third hearing. If that motion fails, then we basically have to wait. If it doesn't fail, we can continue forward. So, all in favor of the motion to waive the third hearing as is the board's standard policy, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Chair detects the motion carries unanimously. We can now address the ordinance to repeal Article 6, Section 10343B, which is the Volunteer Rescue Squad Personal Property Tax. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Taylor, to repeal the current Article 6, Section 10343B. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, my only concern, and I made the motion, and I guess my concern, again, is timing. And we just have to do a better job of not bringing things to the board at the 11th hour and said it has to be done. We have to do a better job. That's my concern. It just, to me, stinks, and I don't like it. So I voted, made the motion. It needs to be done. I understand the position of the commission, but it just gets under my crawl a little bit now.
Understand, Mr. Underwood. Any other discussion on the motion to repeal? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. That takes care of agenda item number 2. We've done agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 4, Mr. James, I take it you're going to do the proposed amendments to Chapter 92 Sewer and the Code of Caroline Schedule of Water and Sewer Rates related to Phase 2 of the Dawn Wastewater Project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be with you again. Back in February, you authorized advertising for public hearing for changes to the Dawn ordinance. That public hearing was held on March 27th, and I believe there were no public comments, but during the board's discussion, you asked for some additional information and delayed final action. At both those previous meetings, I walked through each of the changes, and unless you want me to walk through those again, I'm suspecting we don't need to trespass on your time and do that since we've done the details before. I can do more high level. The changes effectively do 3 things. It makes the administration of the Dawn wastewater system consistent with how the larger system is administered. That includes moving the fee structure for connection and availability and monthly charges to the schedule of fees and out of the county code. It sets the connection and availability charges that are based on a lower base amount from what you have today or actual cost plus 20%. This, too, is consistent with the larger county system. Finally, what it does is it defines the Phase 2 project area that we have been authorized federal and state grant funds for, and sets up the incentive-based fee structure utilizing those grant funds to encourage the new customers to connect to the system. This is also consistent with the approach that was used in Phase 1. Now, in the authorization to advertise and in the advertised and the public hearing advertisement, we set a deadline for sign-up of April 15. We didn't anticipate that we would have some delays because you asked for some additional information. And so it was pointed out in your materials for tonight that needs to change in the final code change from April 15 to May 1. But other than that, it would require no further changes from what was advertised, and the county attorney has indicated that that does not require an additional public hearing to modify. Now, during the discussion on March 27th, you had asked staff to provide some information on the difference between the outstanding fees owed by some delinquent customers and the penalties and interest that had accrued. and staff has provided you with that information. There was some concern that the board needed some flexibility to be able to direct the waiving of some of those penalties and fees, because in some cases the penalties and interest were higher than the delinquent fee themselves. That would require a separate code change, and that's being worked on because we've heard that message from the board. But we still need to have these changes in effect. Those are really two separate actions, and we need to move forward with those because we do have time limits on the grants, as I had indicated to you at the March 27 meeting. And if we postpone this, we're going to start running into reporting problems with our grantor agencies that we're not sticking to our timetable that we previously agreed to. The project has a total cost of just under $690,000, $686,000. Of that, just under $500,000 or $483,000 is provided by the two grant sources. The balance is provided by the county, and that was also previously discussed and action previously taken on that. If you have some detailed questions on the report that was provided by staff on the delinquencies and the efforts that have occurred over the last 3 to 5 weeks to improve that delinquency situation, Joey Schiebel is here and can answer you in greater detail, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. James at this point in time? Excuse me? Okay. Mr. Black?
Mr. James, can you tell me what is the exact, what is the total cost? I can't find that sheet. What is the total cost to the county on this?
That was in your report from the, let's see, the March 27 board meeting, and the total project cost for Phase 2, $686,000.
What's the count? Excuse me, the county. What is Caroline County paying into this?
I'm sorry. My apologies. The county's share, $193,000.
And how many homes did we say this was again?
About 30, maybe be 31 or 32, but we're using a planning number of 30. That we'll know after the deadline, for sure. We have 29 actually signed up with all their paperwork in right at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Taylor?
No, I don't.
Mr. Underwood? No questions, comments. Mr. James, certainly I appreciate everything that you're doing for the residents of Reed Church. And I want to say that I'm hoping that we will be very diligent in pushing to ensure that we work to get those delinquencies caught up, and that's a concern of mine. And I think I certainly feel much better. I'm feeling good about what we're doing, but I want some responsibility on the other end as well, not just from the county government. So hope they understand my message.
I think the additional efforts on behalf of by county staff have borne some very real fruit over the last few weeks, and we've gone from a delinquency rate of about 25% here a month or so ago to which was 46 of 182 customers. All but 13 of those, from what Joey was telling me a short while ago, have either made payments or made arrangements on a payment plan. So if you assume that those folks are going to follow through as they have taken the positive steps to initiate the conversations with the county, that's moving you from a 25% delinquency to a 7% delinquency in a matter of 30 or so days.
How many failed systems are we actually going to catch with this next phase?
Excellent question. This is one of the challenges that we face when you try to deal with this type of issue. The health department has a representative on our project management team, and we asked that question to the health department. The health department answer to that question is we don't have specific information on specific failed or failing systems in this immediate area, but we have the same soil structure as we have in the larger, where the Phase 1 area, and so they believe we have failed or failing systems, but because no one with a failed or failing system has come to the health department and said, I need help, because they know with their bad soils there is no help that can be achieved unless they get to hook up to a system, then those folks are suddenly in the catch-22 with the health department, because the health department, when they know they have a problem, they have to force the people to fix it. We have over half the folks in this group that we've got signed up are low, moderate income. So you can see the dilemma that the homeowner, I mean, they know what happens if they come in and ask for help and then there are no good soils on their property. What do we do? And the health department is put in an equal dilemma because they don't want to put somebody out of their house. So the health department's answer, and pardon the long answer, but that's the nature of this type of project. It really is a challenge for the county. It was a challenge under Phase 1. Unless we do some type of a detailed home-by-home survey, we can't answer, oh, it's this address and this address and this address. And if we do that, unless we're prepared to take action to help them fix it, why did we suddenly put people in harm's way with a state regulatory agency, which is what we would do? And this, in projects like this and in other parts of the state, it is the exact same dilemma that drives how you specifically identify and solve the problem all at the same time. I hope that answers your question, or helps to answer your question.
I understand the answer. I guess since nobody's willing to say it hasn't failed, there aren't any failed. So what we're saying is there aren't any failed systems that are reported.
There are known failed or failing systems, except that, as the health department will tell you, we know the soil conditions. We know what we found when we did Phase 1, where we had those failed or failings under a large number. And then you had problems, okay? Real rainy weekend, and company comes to visit, and you suddenly have an area in the backyard that you tell the kids they can't play in. And you know, we have those realities, and you just don't go report that to the health department because they're forced to come back to you and say, okay, what are you going to do to fix it?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. James, to follow up on that.
Sure.
The Phase 1 project saw what percentage of homes that had systems that wouldn't meet standards?
I don't remember my exact numbers of the failed or failing. We had 20 homes that did not have complete indoor plumbing. Now, we do not have that problem in this group of homes. We had many homes that were using either pit privies or porta-johns, or had straight pipes that we found. And of course, that wasn't reported to the health department until we found them as we were doing the project work. Slightly over half of the 182 customers are or were low moderate income at the time that we hooked them up. Matter of fact, I think that number is a little higher now because of the recession. And that's pretty much the same mix that we have in this area that we're trying to serve now.
No other questions? We've held the public hearing, so our action, Mr. Parton, would be
to adopt the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a move that we adopt the proposed amendments to Chapter 92 of the Caroline Code and schedule sewer and water fees related to the Phase 2 of Dawn wastewater project.
I second.
motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Taylor to adopt proposed amendments to Chapter 92, Sewers and Code of Caroline. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chair detects division of the House. Mr. Black, how do you vote?
Nay.
Mr. Taylor, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley, how do you vote?
Nay.
And Mr. Thomas votes aye, so the motion carries 3-2. We will, anything else, Mr. James?
No, sir, except to thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, sir. Do we we need a break before we go to 5, 6, and 7?